The story of Roy Laman, who was a World War II veteran. He was on the front lines. He was in the Signal Corps, and he'd always joke about how he was close enough to the front lines that he didn't wear a tie, but far enough back he didn't get shot at. We were doing the interview. You could just see it in his eyes as he goes, following the front line, and so he would see all the destruction and the ugliness and the maiming and the killing, and you could just see it in his eyes. But then he talked about a 3-week reprieve from it all, and his eyes get up, and they'd landed in Holland. Once they got into the village, they were all put into the homes of the villagers, and he got to know this family right away, almost like family, and in particular their little 7-year-old daughter. And Roy and Hermine was her name, became close friends and played games and took walks together, and then he talked about how they just made him feel at home and took him to Christmas Eve services to their church, and he would bring them supplies whenever he could. And he laughed about how one time he brought cans of corn and they just stared at him, and he didn't realize back then only the livestock ate corn, but they loved chocolate. Of course, the front line moved, and it's time for him to move, and one of the sisters cut off her braids to give him as momentum so that he would never forget them. And like I said, he just lit up when he was telling the story. And that night in bed, a lot of my interviews, they seep into my dreams, and I woke up the next morning and I got to try to find this little girl. And so I did a search and contacted the local newspaper there and explained what I wanted to do, what I was trying to do, and never heard back from them. I was like, geez, now what do I do? But then I heard back and said, yeah, we'll do a story. So I gave them all the information I could. I didn't know her last name. I only had a picture of her as a little girl, and told the story. And so they said, well, it'll run Saturday morning. So that morning I got up real early, and in the time zone between Colorado and Netherlands, turned on the computer, and boom, there she was. They had ran the story, and right away, she answered. And her and her neighbor Frank went over to that church that Roy talked about and snapped a picture of her in front of that church. And so then went over and told Roy and his wife, and then this communications back and forth ensued, and it was pretty cool. A reporter came back and did a story, a follow-up story with her, and she told the same stories about how they took walks together and played games. And one time, Roy said, hey, there's this great general in town, come with me. And he took her down there, and she sat on his lap. The general gave him a bag of donuts, and it was General Eisenhower. And then at the end, she pulled out her diary where he had written an entry into it. So that was cool. And then sadly, about a month after they connected, she developed a brain tumor and passed. And then he passed 2 years later. But that's my favorite story. Yeah.